American dream every day. I would
My definition of the American dream is earning a college degree, building a career in something I'm passionate about.
Believing in the American dream makes it real, and it makes it become this thing that you can achieve.
Nobody remembers your starting line. They remember if you finished.
The American dream is still very much alive. I think that people don't understand how good it is here.
Because when you are here, you feel like everything is possible, you know.
Hard enough, or if you do something enough, like you can be the best or the greatest at whatever your craft is. And I think that is kind of the essence of the American dream.
The American dream to me
is always going to be a chance for you to better yourself, further yourself, your career. And I'm not just talking about your career, yourself in general.
That American dream.
The American dream lives, not only in the hearts and minds of our own countrymen, but in the hearts and minds of millions of the world's people.
It's all looking good.
Where look, like in between you and the camera?
There you are, if you want to see.
Looking very regal. Awesome. Okay.
Okay, everybody set? We're rolling?
The concept behind the American dream is that life would be better for our kids and grandkids than it was for us. That we were always sacrificing for the next generation. The word that I associate most with it is opportunity. If we work hard, we can be successful, and again, that we can pass that on to the next generation.
When we think about the American dream, we think about being able to do something in this country because you worked hard for it, because you're resilient, because even though you have a lot of doubters, there is something about this country and our opportunities that make what you want to do possible in a way that may not be in other parts of the world.
I think that one of the reasons why there's pessimism around the American dream is partially just cynicism. Sounds cool and it sounds smart. And yet, if you go back and look through history, it's the optimists that have been proven right time and time again.
The biggest inhibitor to pursuing the American dream is nihilism. It's the belief that you don't matter, that you're powerless to make a difference.
When people have a belief that they cannot do something, what do? Well, they don't do. They don't take risks. They don't take challenges. They don't apply for a new job. They don't call and ask whether they can have an introduction to somebody who might help them open a door of opportunity. When you think you can, you do the opposite. You challenge yourself. You wake up each morning and you say, who can I call? What can I do?
We have to remember that 250 years ago, the idea that communities and a country could just govern itself by whatever 50% plus one wanted was such a strange concept that usually wealth and power was passed down from one person to the next.
The greatest sentence ever written, that we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That was radical, and that we're all created equal. Those two things together really changed the course of human history.
What makes America great is that we have this rule of law and a stable financial system, and that if you put your sweat and your equity and your investment into a capability, you own the rights to that. That's extraordinarily unique. And because of that, this is the place where everybody wants to bring their capital. It's the place where everybody wants to live. It's what has made the American economy second to none.
I recently did a podcast with the great Jensen Huang, the founder of NVIDIA. He came to this country like Sergey Brin and Larry Page, like Elon Musk, because this was the place that they had the opportunity to pursue their dream. The greatest entrepreneurs, the greatest founders, the greatest inventors on the face of the planet want to come to America because of the American dream. And Jensen said, the whole brand of America hinges on the promise of the American dream.
My biggest stroke of luck was to be born here in the United States of America. It's a country that champions innovation and free markets, that rewards hard work and meritocracy, a country that provides unparalleled opportunities to rise. Being born in America, I grew up wanting to start a business. I started with baseball cards, then went to stamps, then selling newspaper subscriptions. When the microprocessor came along, I saw the successes of people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and I could not resist the opportunity to jump in. It's America's acceptance, even celebration of failure and risk-taking that is unique and special. And a 19-year-old with a great idea can find customers and the capital to dream big. You have the room to innovate and to disrupt, and just like we've done at Dell, to reinvent yourself over and over again.
When you talk about the leading healthcare discoveries, when you talk about the leading innovations in information technology, when you talk about the leading material science and chemistry innovations, so many of them come from American innovations that at the heart of those things are an American dream that somebody had.
There is no ceiling in America. There is no class ceiling. And to me, the greatest freedom that I see in this country is so unbelievable that your decision determines your destiny. That's not true anywhere else. I can tell you unequivocally, in Germany, I would have reached being a head waiter. But after that, no way would I have given a job where I would have been a general manager in that direction, because I didn't have the right school that I could point to, or the right family I could point to. That is the ultimate freedom. That truly, what I say, that your decisions determine the outcome. Not somebody else's decisions, but yours.
I think as a culture, you get what you reward. And we want to be a culture that implicitly and explicitly rewards people for taking the initiative, for trying hard things, for taking on big visions, for having a sense of responsibility that's bigger than themselves.
Both of my parents grew up in the projects, and so I was born in Pittsburgh and just blue collar all the way. And one day that really changed everything for me. My dad and his buddies were playing poker at our house. It was our night. And I went in there to grab a donut like I always did. And I was like, Dad, I want a new pair of basketball shoes. And he looks at me and he looks at my shoes. He goes, those look like they still work. When you have a job and you have money, you can buy whatever you want. But until then, those are your sneakers. And I'm like, Dad, I'm 12 years old. I can't get a job. And one of his buddies piped up and said, I've got a job for you. I've got these boxes of garbage bags. Why don't you go door to door and sell them to your neighborhood? Bought them for $3, sold them for $6, and I literally went to our neighbors and it was like, hi, my name is Mark. Now imagine this being a 12-year-old Mark. My name is Mark. Do you use garbage bags? And so I sold out of the garbage bags and got my shoes, but more importantly, I learned a lesson. It had nothing to do with age. It had nothing to do with, having money, raising money. It had everything to do with attitude and willingness to try. Because I didn't sell to every house that I went to, but even with all the no's, I learned that getting a yes and being able to start my own little business just was amazing to me. By the time I got to my junior year of high school, I started taking night classes at the University of Pittsburgh and did well and just decided not to go back to high school. So I dropped out of high school and went to the University of Pittsburgh for a year. But the thing about it was Pitt didn't have an undergraduate business school. And so I knew I had to transfer. I saw a list of the top 10 rated undergraduate business schools, and I picked out the cheapest one, and it was Indiana University. After Indiana, I go down to Dallas. I have a Fiat X19 that's got a hole in the floorboard that needs oil every 60 miles. I've got about $60 in my pocket. And I talked to a friend who had moved from IU down to Dallas. And he's like, you got to come down here. You can get a job here. And so I'm like, can I move in with you guys? I'm like, sure, why not? Well, the sure why not was in a 3-bedroom apartment, and I was the 6th roommate. And I had no bed. I didn't have a drawer for my clothes. I had a pile. And so I got this job at the computer store, and he's like, have you done anything with computers? And I'm like, no. And he goes, well, what do you do if you get a question you can't answer? I go, well, I'll open up the manual and read it. He goes, you got the job. And that's what I did. 9 months in, I had a chance to close a deal where I was going to make a $1,500 commission, which would have allowed me to move out of the apartment and get not my own place, but with one roommate instead of 5 other roommates. And so I went to my boss, and I'm like, look, I'm going to go pick up this check, thinking he'd love it, right? It was a $15,000 check. $1,500 of it was my commission. And he's like, no, I need you to open up the store. I'm like, what? I need to go get, so I made the executive decision to go pick up the check, thinking when he got the check, fired me. Fired me on the spot, did not get my commission, did not pass go, did not collect $200. I'm back in the hellhole, and I'm stuck. And I was broke. And I said, you know what? I'm a lousy employee. I'm going to start my own company. And that's what I did. And I needed my first customer. So I took one of the people who had come in looking for software. I'd kept that information. And I told him, I said, look, I have no money. And I can't afford to buy the software that you want and then sell it to you. If you'll put up the money for it, which was $500, I promise you I'll make it work, because I'll make $250, and that's enough for me to live on for at least a week, and then I'll be able to go from there. And I told him, if it doesn't work, I'll wash your car, I'll sweep your floor, I'll walk your dog, and if it works, you can hire me to do additional services and stuff like that to help you install it, and it worked. And it turned into a great customer who led to another customer, and it was still terrifying, because I still had bills. I can't tell you how many times I had a credit card cut up trying to use it. And I would, literally go to a bar and buy my one $3 beer and just eat all the fried mushrooms and all the junk food that was there. I mean, that's how things were going for me. Slowly but surely, my company started to grow. And we got to $15,000 in sales, then $50,000 in sales. And, 2 years later, I was out, living in my own place, and we just started going. Now, it didn't mean everything was perfect along the way. Probably right after things were going good, I got a call from the bank. And he goes, Mr. Cuban, we had somebody drive through the drive-through, and they had these checks that were made out to her. They had been whited out, and her name had been written in. I'm like, you didn't cash them, did you? Of course we did. We're a bank. We had our receptionist / payroll assistant / just general office manager. We had given her our accounts payable checks to send out to all of our vendors. She had taken $82,000 worth, and we had $84,000 in the bank. Now, all of a sudden, I'm mad, and I've got to figure this out. So I called all of our vendors, told them what had happened, told them, give me some time. We managed to turn it around, and that for Micro Solutions, in my 20s, I went 7 years without a vacation. But I loved every minute of it. I started Micro Solutions when I was 24. And that went till I was 30. Was I terrified that it wouldn't work? Yes. Like, I would count every we're in business 1 month. We're in business 3 months. We're in business a year. There was like, these big accomplishments. We have $15,000 in the bank. We have $40,000 in the bank. We had $84,000. We have $2,000 in the bank. Just never dawned on me to give up at all.
You can innovate and create no matter what organization you're in. You might want to create a new organization or business, or you might be working within a large company and create innovation and realize an American dream within that business.
How do you advance in the Navy? And the answer is simple: sustained superior performance. Just do the best you can where you are, not wavering left and right based on whims, but just sustained superior performance. Everything else will work itself out. One of my advantages was that's how I operated. And what I found out later was people observed it that I didn't even know were observing it. We were able to do things that I never imagined I'd be able to do.
When you make a decision to be excellent, the rewards will come. Merit counts.
I think at its best, America is a meritocracy. It's a place where people that are hungry and that have vision and that are willing to work hard can build amazing things, can change their circumstances, and can transform the future for their families and their communities.
Poppy was started in a kitchen, and it was really a solution to my wife's health issues. So I give her the credit. It was definitely her idea. The whole reason Allison started making this in the kitchen was just for herself. There was no desire to ever sell it at all. So we're sitting around the table. It was myself, Allison, and her dad. And her dad goes, "Why don't you just sell your hooch?" We took it to the Dallas Farmers Market, and we started literally selling our hooch. We were drawing these amazing crowds. Like, people were so excited about what we're doing. They wanted to meet us. They wanted to taste the product. And this local forager from Whole Foods was in town. She saw all the hustle and bustle over by our booth. And so she slipped in around the corner and she tried the product and she was blown away. And so she pulled Allison to the side and said, "I love what you guys are doing here. I love your product. You should be in Whole Foods." And it was really from that moment, that external validation, where we're like, maybe we have something here. Whole Foods came knocking. We had our first call with them, and we knew nothing at this point. We had no UPC, we had no ingredient statement, we had no nutrition fact panel. We were literally just selling our hooch that we were making out of the kitchen. And so we had this call with her, and she's like, "All right, you guys are in." And we're like, "Great, let's do it." And so we had quit our jobs, and we got a facility, and we were like starting to build all of this, and we're like, "Great, let's start shipping it." She's like, "No, you just got authorized for the Whole Foods. Now you have to go around to each of the stores and sell your product in." And we thought we were getting this national rollout, but we got authorized for literally 12 stores in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. After like this 7 or 8 month process, setting up this facility, we were like so excited about this, and then we had to go and sell them. We sold 11 stores, and then finally the 12th store came on. I literally went in there probably like 6 or 7 times to sell this guy. Spent all of our savings. We maxed out all of our credit cards. We were getting loans from wherever we could to make it happen. Ultimately, the business was cash flowing itself barely, but there was a lot of robbing Peter to pay Paul for 3 years just to keep the wheels on the bus. So I call them the dark days. I swear it was a constant thought in my head, like, what are we doing? Everybody thought that we were crazy. There was a moment where we didn't think we could afford our mortgage, and it was really, really crazy. We were broke, and we were heads down, grinding like 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to make ends meet. We knew that we needed money. We had all of this opportunity for growth in front of us, and Allison was scrolling on Instagram, and Mark Cuban posted, "Hey, there's a casting call in Dallas in 2 days." We got a deal on Shark Tank. We raised $400,000 in exchange for 25% of the business. So it was an expensive deal, but we got a strategic partner that really knew food and beverage and CPG really well and was able to add a lot of value in those early years. And it was through that partnership and the resources that they brought that allowed us to have this radical pivot from Mother Beverage, this apple cider vinegar drink in a glass bottle that was sold at the farmer's market and Whole Foods, to transition it to Poppy. It was 2023 at this point. The business was on its way to doing about $200 million of revenue that year. And we were thinking, should we do the Super Bowl or should we not? We had created our first commercial. We were testing it. It was testing really, really well. But we had ultimately decided not to do the Super Bowl. But Allison was at a TikTok creators conference, and out of dumb luck, she was like, hey, you wouldn't happen to have a Super Bowl commercial? At this point, Super Bowl commercials were really hard to come by. And the guy was like, yeah, I actually do have a Super Bowl spot. And so probably 5 days, literally 5 days before the Super Bowl, we bought a Super Bowl commercial. The Super Bowl commercial was about $11 million. We literally signed the contract before we even had the money in the bank. And this was a floater pod. And so it could have aired in the fourth quarter. It could have been a total blowout after the Super Bowl halftime show, and nobody's watching the game. And it could have been a massive flop. We ended up airing about a minute or two before the halftime show, and our ad was the most watched ad in that Super Bowl. And so the doors blew open. We thought we were going to maybe grow the business by 50%. We ended up growing the business 2.5 times year over year because of that Super Bowl commercial. One thing that I would say about the American dream, people think that it's not a real thing, and I'm living proof that it is a real thing. One of the biggest things that I would say is there's no overnight success. There's such thing as a 10-year overnight success, and we're that living proof. But I think if you show up and you work hard, you don't take no for an answer, and you keep going, you'll find success.
One dimension of character that I have been studying since my first day of graduate school is grit, the passion and perseverance to chase a really challenging goal, and not for a day or a week, but really for months or years, and in some cases even a lifetime. That dimension of character, my research finds, has pretty much nothing to do with how naturally talented you are. And I think there are a lot of people who count themselves out because they look at their slow start, they think how behind they are, they look to their left, they look to their right, they say, she's faster than me, he's smarter than me. But what about your grit? Do you have passion and perseverance for that long-term goal? Because that has nothing to do with your natural talent. And my research shows it is elemental to achieving your dream. If you look at achieving anything worthwhile in this world, you immediately come to the conclusion that it's not overnight, that it takes a really long time. And that is why the longer you are in a game, the more grit matters and the less your initial talent does. So over long periods of time, I bet on grit.
Leading yourself means you have a vision, you have a purpose, you have a higher purpose. Once you determine that purpose, it cannot be a pipe dream. You cannot just talk about it. You have to commit yourself to it. And once you have done that, you have to initiate the things that get you to that purpose. And I keep focus on it and not end up with an excuse. In the first year and a half in starting Rhodes Scholar, it didn't work. It was a disaster. It was close to the point where I could not make it. We couldn't. I thought, it is the end, it is over, we can't make it. When I didn't tell Sherry, my wife, because she had a small baby and we had debts and we had other problems. I didn't want to burden her even more with my problems. But then I had to. When I talked to her and said, sweetheart, we made a mistake moving here. And she said, don't argue with God, we prayed plenty. And I said, oh, okay, I'll never argue with God in front of you again, but... And she said, where is the man that always said, keep on focus on your vision? And I said, well, don't I said, no, I don't need an explanation. Where is the man? I want to know where that man is that said, no matter what, focus on the vision, keep on talking. I said, Sherry, please, no, do not explain. Where is that man? And I stopped and I went to the telephone and called my assistant and said, call my vice presidents in for an early meeting tomorrow morning. And we got together for a whole day. And the rest is history. It was the #1 hotel company in the world. The main setback there was that I was giving up. I was focusing on an excuse. Once you know where you're going, want to go, you find answers how to get there. But you have to stick to it. It is not easy, but you can do it.
So I think it's really that conviction to what you're doing and the life you're trying to achieve or the product you're trying to build that'll get you through all those difficult times.
If you have a mindset that you're supposed to have a perfect journey and you're not supposed to encounter much adversity or failure or setbacks, you can misdiagnose those bad days as signs that you should quit when that is not the case.
So I think that's the American dream is, I don't think anything's ever given to you. I think you have to seize it.
You wouldn't be crazy enough to pursue these things because on day one, you're alone, you have a napkin, it's the sketch of your dream, and nobody's telling you you're going to succeed, right? And so you have to be willing to fail.
You can't guarantee anything. We all have to be willing to fail. I think a lot of people go through life being safe, and that's fine. I'm not saying don't do that, but if you're going to shoot far, you've got to take risks.
If you fail, that's okay, because you can pick up and keep going. That's what this country is tremendous for.
You know, one of the design choices we made in this country that most people don't think about day to day is our bankruptcy law. In other places on the planet, if you fail, you lose everything, right? So failure subjects you to a life of misery. In the United States, we have a bankruptcy law. And the reason we have a bankruptcy law is we said because important in this system, we need people to take risk, but we need to say to them, you're so important to the American dream and the American enterprise that if you fail, you don't ruin your life. You can declare bankruptcy and start again.
Well, one of the most important traits of anyone who's successful is resilience. Confidence that although you've fallen, you can still get up and make a difference.
One of the things that you are absolutely going to need if you are going to achieve your dream is the resilience to get up again after a bad day. And why is that? Because you cannot achieve any dream without bad days, without failures, meaning you screwed up, without setbacks, sometimes not your fault. And if you can't get up again after that bad day, then you're out of the game. You're not playing. And as I say, you cannot win a game that you are not playing.
There's this quote that comes top of mind: businesses don't fail, founders quit. And I think a lot of the times people just give up before their big breaking moment.
I think the further you get into your dreams, the more challenging it becomes, right? Because again, nothing good or nothing meaningful ever comes very easily. And the more impact that you want to have, the more challenges that you're going to have.
My granddad, my mom's dad, was a dairy farmer in Skiatook, Oklahoma. Had a 8th grade education, and he was kind of my hero. I followed him around everywhere as a little boy and loved going to the farm and working with granddad, and just taught me, just super hard worker, and was able to live his American dream without education, but just through hard work and grit and determination. And then I think when I got older, I started looking at some national business people. I used to think, what is the difference between the local business guy that just has the restaurant in town versus the guy that can scale it? My friend's dad was getting in the mortgage business. And so it was more of a sales job, being a loan officer, getting paid commission, the more loans that you did. And I learned it for 2 years. And as soon as I had my 2 years up, I went to Oklahoma City and with $1,000 got my mortgage broker's license to become a mortgage broker. And that's the story, how Gateway started, with $1,000 and a computer. And then I was like, all right, I'm in business. I was so excited, hanging my shingle, and I was finally in business. I made a lot of mistakes. We had to put the equity of our house in there. And then when I finally moved and started making a little money, I had a savings account, but then we had a trading loss, and I had to empty my 401k to put it back into the company. And so there's all those stories that every entrepreneur has. So the financial crisis hit our industry in 2008. So we're about a 7-year-old company at that time, 8-year-old company. And the margins were super small. We weren't making any money. I thought we were going to go out of business like every other company. If you remember, if you go back, there were all the foreclosures, property values went down. Probably 10,000 mortgage companies went out of business at that time. I could have easily given up. It wasn't worth it. We weren't making any money. I was getting attacked, and the industry was falling apart. We had lawsuits coming in. And so I just doubled down and I said, I'm not quitting. I'm going to fight through it. And I tell people now, it was like, everybody's seen the movie Forrest Gump, right? They had the big hurricane. It wiped out all the shrimp boats. And he made all the money because he was the only shrimp boat left. And I laugh and I say, after everybody got out of the business, I was the only one left in the mortgage business. And so we were able to clean up, and little truth to that. And we just took off after that.
There will always be obstacles, whatever business I think you go into. It's your willingness to never give up and to never say, this is impossible.
There's only one direction, and the direction is forward. And that's been the spirit of America, right? Like Valley Forge, go to the battles of the Revolution. The people who put this country on the planet, they only knew one direction, and the direction was forward.
The origin of Simple Modern actually was me and a couple of very trusted friends dreaming about what it would look like to create a radically different type of company that led with culture and generosity. Then we would figure out how we would make the money and how we would fund it. But we actually started with what would it feel like to work inside of this company and what would be the missional purpose of the company. And then if we could create something that actually funded that, man, that would be awesome. And so that's exactly how we built Simple Modern.
And I think entrepreneurship is not necessarily about making money. I thought about working with my friends and doing something that I love and creating opportunities to work with people that I wanted to work with and setting that culture. That's what I always wanted, is just be able to enjoy what you're doing, work with your friends, create, build something.
And by the way, if you get to this title or whatever it is, it means nothing. But the journey to that place is wonderful. Because there are people that you work with, that you live with, and that you meet, and there's hardship that you overcome. All that is a beautiful journey.
I grew up in a public housing project. But I was always taught by my mother, it's not where you live, it's how you live. And she stressed that for her 6 kids. My mother put 2 books in my hand at an early age, a math book in one hand and a Bible in the other. And she told me, keep your head in these books, you'll make it out. And as a kid, you don't know what out means, right? But it was out of poverty, out of some of the stuff that was happening in our neighborhood. I was taught at a very early age that education mattered. Going to school was my refuge. It was a place where I could hide, feel free, be safe. I just loved school. When I was 11 years old, I actually saw my father shoot a man in the head. And it was in self-defense. You can imagine the chaos that broke out in our family. And we ended up having to be sequestered in the house for safety purposes. But I cried because I wanted to go to school. My mother figured out a way for me to go to school. She had a uniformed police officer take me to school. And he would show up every day for the rest of that year. And every now and then I'd say, let's jump in the car and, put the siren on. He never would put the siren on, right? But he got me to school. He did exactly what was written on his car. It said to protect and to serve. And that's what he did. 3 teachers and a principal embraced me and asked what was going on in our family. I mean, they knew us, right? What was going on in our family? They embraced my mom. They knew my mom had this great desire, for her kids to continue their education. And they just embraced me. And they got me on a path to where I ended up graduating at the top of my school district. And I ended up with 5 full scholarships to the college of my choice. I remember the day that I stepped on Berkeley's campus. 17 years old, kid from the projects. I looked up at all the big buildings, Sathergate, the Campanile, and I just remember crying at 17 years old. It's just like my whole world was changing in a variety of ways. And I remember looking up, thinking about how big everything was, the big buildings and all of that. And that's when it came to me that I had to be big. From the day I left campus, I had 13 job offers. My first couple of weeks of work, my boss's boss told me to take off my red shoes and to take down my braids. And I was 21 years old. And even when I tell that story, I don't have her in a negative light, because she was, in her own way, pouring into me, saying, this is kind of what everybody else looks like. This is what they're doing. And here's what I think needs to happen for you to be successful. I was blessed that I ended up in AT&T's fast track management program, supervising operators. There are very, very few women, people of color, right? And so I was unique, only, black woman in the program. And I've been the only and the first so many times in my life. It just makes me realize I gotta succeed, because people are watching, and my job is to make sure that I'm making it easier for the next person. I was on that journey for 36 years, leading and inspiring people. I retired from AT&T after 36 years, started my own company, and I was on a call with my client and my phone was blowing up. I didn't even look at the phone. I handed my husband the phone and I said, one of the kids need money. He came back a couple minutes later and he said, this dude doesn't need any money. It's Mark Cuban trying to reach you. Somebody gave him my name and said I had been instrumental in helping AT&T land on Fortune's 100 Best Places to Work list for the first time ever. And that I had a history of transforming cultures. And of course, I didn't do it by myself. It is about teamwork. When I look at how we actually transformed the culture of the Mavericks, it was about selecting the right people and really being intentional about our values. My teachers were very intentional. I had mentors that were very intentional about pouring into me. So I came in being very intentional with the employees at the Mavs about our values and about where we were going. I wanted them to feel good about the brand of the Dallas Mavericks. So we did a lot to just try to motivate people, inspire them, pour into them and their dreams, what they had personally and professionally, and then just be there for them. That's the American dream for me, that I get access to it for a purpose so that I can make life better for somebody else.
What is realistic is working hard, having grit, staying true to your values, so that in the end, success will find you and you will find success. And sometimes it's not all about what our bank account says. It's really much more about what we contribute to the world around us, the people that we love, and the people that we'll never really know, but will be impacted by the decisions that we make and the community or businesses we build.
When I was young, tragedy hit our family when my father died in front of me when I was 3. As I got older, I started better realizing what happened. And I think that realization just turned to anger. I ended up getting into a lot of fights. I was a kid who was just, frankly, pretty lost and hurting. My mother had been threatening me with sending me away to military school for years. She's working 3 different jobs, and she's just trying to figure out, how do I save my son? One day she came up to me, she's like, I'm gonna send you to military school. And I was like, I know, Mommy, I know, I'm gonna work harder. And she's like, nah, you're going next week. I ran away 5 times in the first 4 days, and I kept on trying to run away. And finally, I think after the second to last time, it was the day 4 after I tried to run away, it was because they actually gave me a map on how to get to a train station. And so I'm trying to follow this map, and the map was fake. The map took me to the middle of nowhere, but they just wanted to get a sense of how bad I wanted to go home. And they got an answer that I was really ready to go home. And they let me make one phone call, and they said, you got 5 minutes, call whoever you want, I don't care. But you got 5 minutes to make a phone call. So I called the only number that I had memorized, which was my mom. So I called her and I'm like telling her, like, Mommy, come get me, please. I'll do better. I'll do whatever you want me to do. She was like, you know, too many people are rooting for you and have sacrificed for you, and you're going to stay. If you asked me when I was 13, what do you want to do or what do you want to be? I don't think I could give you an answer. The military talks about how, you know, you can't hit a target that you can't see, right? You got to have eyes on a target if you're going to actually take down a target. And I didn't see a target. So by the time I'd finished that first year, where my grades were better and I could play sports because I wasn't on probation, and finally she was like, you know, I told you this was a mandatory year, and you did your year. And I said, if it's okay, I'd like to stay. There's no way that I accomplished my American dream without a village who helped to lift it up for me, who helped to show me what it looked like, who helped to paint between the lines, who helped to move obstacles out of my way. That's part of the beauty of the American dream. I think people sometimes get it twisted when they think the American dream is the people who accomplish things on their own. I actually don't think that's true. I think the American dream is the people who find themselves surrounded by the village.
We're all put here to take care of each other. Sometimes we forget about that. But I don't have to go through any of this by myself. I can't go through any of it by myself. We have to show up for people.
We need to support one another. Honestly, that helps with the American dream, because when we don't support one another, people fall away or they end up in conflict.
I lived in South Louisiana. My favorite place ever. I was a happy child. I made straight A's in school. I was a majorette. My life was happy. My life was good. And then one day my dad walked out the door and it crushed me. And the following day, my mom loaded us up, me and my two sisters, and moved us to Texas to my grandmother's house. And I hated my life. And I did not know how to get back to being a happy kid. And then at 12 years old, I was offered a drug. And that felt like my confidence, my peace, my happiness was restored in that little pill. And I thought, this is what I have to hold on to for the rest of my life. I went from straight A student to straight Fs. My mom wanted to send me to treatment. She wanted to send me to programs, and I just ran away. About 1984, I came to Oklahoma to find my mom and was actually in recovery and ended up meeting a preacher's son. And I knew that the preacher's son used drugs. And I told him how bad my addiction had been, but he promised me he would not let my drug addiction get out of control again. It completely takes over, to the point of being married to this man, having 3 children with this man, and raising 3 children in the most horrific domestic violence and drug addiction ever. And eventually, I was sentenced to prison in Oklahoma. I knew what it felt like to be an abandoned kid. And I had done the same thing to my children that my dad did to me. But I told my children, I don't know how prison is going to change my life, but all I know is I'm coming back to be your mom. I had a plan in mind. I was going to get out of prison and return to where my children were. I wanted everything instantly. And I had to learn to wait. I had to hold down a job. I needed a driver's license. I needed a car. I needed the basics that most people get at 16. And I'm 37. I had to be ready to be a mom. Eventually, my children did come to me. 4 years later, I met a Christian man. He married me and 3 children, and he has given us a great life. When I married my husband, he had a nice home and a pool. So we're in the pool. I have my 3 children, 1 grandchild. My husband is grilling, and I'm thinking, I'm living the dream. This is my dream. My dream has come true. I got to thinking, my children got their mother back, and the trajectory of their life has changed. What about the other 30,000 children in Oklahoma that have a broken heart because they have an incarcerated parent? And that day, that became my mission, to impact as many children in the state of Oklahoma as I can by going into the prisons and saving these moms. If I can save a mom, I can save a child. And so that became my dream. I have been going back into the prisons on a weekly basis since 2011. Every week you will find me in a women's facility in Oklahoma. And my goal there is to help them to know your life can be different. You have it within you to dream again, and you have it in you to believe in yourself. We either lay down or we get up. And I encourage people to get up and pick up that American dream. Don't give up because of the economy, or don't give up who's in office. Don't let those things rule over you. You get up and be you and do something with your life. And if you only make a difference in one life, then congratulations. Because for that one life, you mattered. And that is a good thing. I am living the American dream because it's not what we acquire in the American dream. It's who we can impact.
Not everybody starts from a great place. Not everybody has a direct path to everything they wanted. There is always going to be a struggle. There's always going to be a challenge, no matter what your dream is.
It's up to you to define yourself. It's not others. Others don't define you. You define yourself. The opportunity of doing that in this country more than anywhere else, because you're not defined by where you came from. You're defined by who you are.
Our lives are relatively short, but what defines meaning and purpose is that your life was about more than just yourself.
We're put on this planet for a reason. And that God-given gift to be able to make a difference is something that we should never give up on.
And it's not about how much money you make. It's about the impact you have and the joy you bring to yourself and others.
The values of generosity, respect, kindness, welcoming, helping each other, sharing, caring for people, all those are what you need to be successful.
It was great with the Mavs. We win a championship. People come up, hug you. And it's better when somebody I don't know walks up to me and starts crying and hugging me and says, you saved my grandmother's or my life because I couldn't afford my medication. And it was going to be $900 or $1,200 or $2,000, and it's $43 at costplusdrugs.com. And that happens all the time. And I get emails all the time like that. What could possibly be better?
The catalyzing moment for Invest America. My kids at the time were 13 and 11. And at the dinner table, I told them about, the idea, and I decided to show them the investment accounts I started for them at birth. And so I showed them their accounts that had compounded into a lot because I had invested the money in Google and other things. And my son Lincoln said, "Wow, this is amazing," etc. And they sat there for a second, didn't look happy, and he said, "But what about all the other kids?" So it got us into a conversation, and I said, yeah, most kids don't have this. And then he asked the question that no dad wants to hear. He said, what are you going to do about it? Once you hear those words, you can't unhear them. Lincoln has now worked for Invest America. He's been in every meeting, as has my son Jack. One night we were meeting late with the Speaker of the House, just Lincoln and myself, and we had a breakthrough. Walked out of the office, it was dark. Walked into the rotunda, just standing there looking up with your kid. And I just said, nothing in the history of this country has occurred without some ordinary folks like us having an idea and fighting for the idea. And that to me was, just a dad and kid cared about the country. Every child born in America will start off life with an investment account, a free investment account for life, and it's going to be seeded with a $1,000 jumpstart. It's going to unlock the human potential that has been so much a part of the American dream and so much a part of the last 250-year experiment, but we need to protect it for the next 250 years. And the way we protect it is by getting everybody into the game of ownership and capitalism and free markets, and I think we're well on our way.
Make no mistake. It will be average people all across the United States putting in exceptional effort that will continue to make the country great.
When I started the idea of Invest America, $1,000 for every kid at birth, everybody told me it was crazy. But this is the country where crazy is possible, right? This is the story of America. This is where moonshots happen. This is where Steve Jobs invents the iPhone. This is where Michael Dell starts the most important computer company. This is where Jensen Huang starts a computer chip that has revolutionized artificial intelligence. This is where it happens, right? It doesn't happen in other countries. That is this unique thing that came together 250 years ago.
All of us get to stand on the shoulders of great people that came before us, that literally at times sacrificed their lives so that we would be able to enjoy the liberties, the freedoms, the opportunity, the prosperity that we get to live in.
I think the American dream is still very much alive and well, but I do not think we can take it for granted.
But constantly, every generation, right, they have to recommit to that. We have to be devoted to paying that forward and making sure that that continues. We can't take it for granted, right? There's nothing etched in stone that says forever this will be the case.
And I think that is, at its very core, why so many of us fight so hard to remind our fellow Americans that the stories we tell ourselves matter, especially the ones we tell our children. They're stories that remind us that if we work hard and collaborate with everybody else, that we can achieve unimaginable gains, not just for this country, but for the entire planet.
When I go talk to kids, I always ask them to do the same thing. I said, look at the TV monitor. Look at the chair you're sitting on. Look at the desk in front of you. Look at the notepad. There was a time when none of those things existed. And somebody had the idea, I'm going to create a notepad that has little spirals on it. I'm going to create chairs that's got padding on it, or a desk that's got something underneath it. Somebody had that idea. Why can't it be you?
You might be the one with the cure for cancer. You might be the one that's going to teach my grandson. Okay, so I need you to do what you got to do because I am depending on you. My kids are depending on you. My grandkids are depending on you. If everybody thinks the dream is not alive, we'll all be in a corner somewhere with our heads down and the dream won't be alive.
There's something so beautiful about this country and why it's worth fighting for and why its values are worth fighting for and why its histories are worth fighting for. Knowing that the country's history has not been even, it hasn't been perfect, but the journey has still been so powerful and so unique in world history.
It's not perfect. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but every day we're working to make sure that it's a little more perfect than it has been before.
I don't believe there's another country on this planet where it's so easy for anybody from all walks of life to be able to start a business. I believe we live on this playing field that's driven by this spirit to improve, to create, to make things better.
If we allow the American entrepreneurial spirit to thrive with a legal system that is second to none, where people get to own the fruits of their labor, that's what's going to set us apart for generations to come.
We have unleashed a democratic form of dreamery, a democratic idea that anyone from any corner of this country, we don't care where you're from, we don't care what your religion is, we don't care what the wealth is of your family. We want you to create. If you're willing to create, if you're willing to put your head down and work hard, you can make it here. And that, when this country was founded 250 years ago, was such a foreign concept.
Getting a rocket into space, getting to Mars, catching rockets falling out of the sky, those were not acts of government. Those were acts of entrepreneurs pursuing their American dream. The iPhone was not an act of government. It was an act of an entrepreneur pursuing their dream. Those people are the heroes of the American story. They are the ones inventing the future that actually moves humanity forward.
Name another country in the world where we have been able to welcome people from all over the globe and have them start from nothing and build something beautiful and lasting. Name another country in the world that has done it. The answer is there is none.